Ever thought about this? In the world of blockchain, what if a perfectly valid signed transaction could be snatched out of thin air and used against you? Kind of like a ghost in the machine. Well, today, we're pulling back the curtain on this subtle but super powerful threat, the replay attack. Let's get right into it. Hey, welcome to CodeAccessHub. Our whole goal here is to take these really complex, sometimes intimidating tech ideas and just break them down into clear, practical lessons for everyone, whether you're a pro developer or just curious about how all this stuff works. To really get a grip on this, let's start with a simple analogy. Think about your car's keyless remote. You press a button, it sends a radio signal, and boom, your car unlocks. Simple. But what if someone was sitting in a car nearby just listening, and they captured that exact signal? What if they could just hit play on that recording later on? They wouldn't need your key, they wouldn't have to hack some complex code. Nope. They just rebroadcast the valid signal you already sent. And just like that, they're in your car. That right there is the core idea of a replay attack. Now, here's the kicker, and this is super important. A replay attack isn't about breaking fancy encryption, not at all. It's about taking a completely legitimate piece of data, like your signed blockchain transaction, and just maliciously using it again. The attacker doesn't even need to know what's inside the message. They just need to know that resending it is going to get them something they want. So, how does this actually play out on a blockchain? Let's walk through the step-by-step mechanics of how one of these attacks unfolds. It usually happens in 4 stages. First up is capture. This is easy. An attacker just watches a public blockchain and records a valid transaction you made. Second is the context shift. This is the clever part. They find another place, another environment where that old transaction might still look valid, like a different version of the blockchain. Third, resubmission. They just blast that captured transaction into this new context. And finally, number 4, execution. If that new network says, hey, this looks legit, the transaction runs again. And that's when you get some really nasty, unintended consequences. And here's where it gets really interesting. This isn't just one kind of threat. It's more like a whole family of attacks, and each one targets a slightly different weakness. Let's break down 5 of the most common types you're going to run into. First on the list, the missing application nonce. Okay, so a nonce is just a fancy term for a number used once. Think of it like a one-time use ticket at a fair. A well-built app will require a new ticket for every action. But if the developers forget to include a nonce, an attacker can take one signature, one ticket, and just use it over and over and over again inside that same application. Next, we've got hard fork replays. This one became famous after the huge DAO hack that led to the Ethereum hard fork. See, this split created 2 chains, Ethereum Classic and the Ethereum we use today. But right after the split, they were identical. So a transaction you made on one chain could be copied and replayed on the other, letting attackers effectively double spend their funds across both networks. Yikes. Now this one is a lot like the hard fork attack, but it happens between totally separate blockchains that just happen to use similar technology, like all the EVM-compatible chains out there. Since your wallet address is often the same on Ethereum and, say, Polygon, a signature meant for one could be replayed on the other, unless you take steps to prevent it. It's literally like having one key that can unlock a bunch of different doors that all have the same lock. Okay, this next one gets a little deep into the crypto weeds, but it's fascinating. The specific math behind most blockchain signatures has this weird symmetrical property. It's a quirk in the numbers that means for every single valid signature, you can actually calculate a second equally valid twin signature. It's wild. This is called signature malleability. An attacker doesn't need your private key or anything. They just use a little bit of math to generate this twin, replay your action, and cause all sorts of problems if a system isn't built to handle it. And finally, we've got the most dangerous one of all, cryptographic nonce reuse. So inside every digital signature, there's a secret random number that absolutely must be used only once, ever. If a wallet has a bug and accidentally uses the same random number to sign 2 different messages, an attacker can take those 2 signatures, do some math, and literally extract your private key. And if that happens, it is game over. All right, I know, that was a lot of doom and gloom. But here's the good news. There are really powerful ways to defend against these attacks. So let's talk about the shield, how we build solid replay protection. The entire idea behind protection boils down to one word: context. You see, a vulnerable signature is just a signature. It exists in a vacuum. But a protected signature is different. It's tied or bound to a very specific context. It's designed to know the answers to questions like, hey, which blockchain is this for? Which specific app? And have I seen this exact request before? And we build that context using a few key tools. A chain ID basically locks a transaction to one specific blockchain, so it can't be replayed on another. A nonce, like we talked about, stops it from being replayed on the same chain. You can even use a timestamp to make a signature expire after a few minutes. And a domain separator links a signature to one and only one smart contract. So what does all this mean out there in the real world? Well, putting these protections into practice has some serious challenges, and it's really changed how we think about building systems that span multiple blockchains. And it's not always easy. Trying to get everyone on the same page during a messy hard fork? Super difficult. Sometimes developers build their own custom signing methods that have tiny hidden flaws. And let's be honest, in a world with a dozen chains, it's easy for us users to get confused and sign something for the wrong network. Those cross-chain bridges, the highways between blockchains, they are especially risky because they're so complex. But the industry is always moving forward. We're seeing much stronger standards for cross-chain communication. Big upgrades like account abstraction are coming, which will give us smarter wallets that can do things like set spending limits. And tools that were once rare, like formal verification and transaction simulation, are becoming the norm for catching these bugs before they cause any damage. So here's the bottom line. After hearing about all these scary attacks, you're probably asking, do these protections actually work? The answer is a huge, resounding yes. The standards we've talked about are now the bedrock of blockchain security. When they're implemented correctly, they prevent well over 99% of potential replay attacks. They just work. So, I'll leave you with this question to chew on. As our digital worlds get more and more connected, and we build more bridges and pathways between them, the opportunities for these kinds of attacks are only going to grow. The real challenge for the future is, how do we make sure those pathways between our digital worlds are truly secure? If you want to dive deeper into topics just like this one, you can find a whole bunch of our explainers over on the CodeAccessHub YouTube channel. We drop a new breakdown every single week. And of course, if this helped clear things up for you, it would mean a lot if you'd hit that like button, maybe share it with a friend who's curious, and definitely subscribe so you don't miss what we've got coming up next. Thanks so much for watching.